I'm really excited for week 3 of our series, Game Day. I love football season. This is a great time of year. I'm curious, how many of you guys had a great day yesterday? Any UT fans in the house? Pretty excited over the big win? Yes, go UT. Any Oklahoma fans that are remaining quiet right now? We've got like right here in the middle, I just saw scowls like looking at me like burning a hole in my soul. They're like, okay, we're out. That's it. We're done. Well, man, it is such a great time of year. I love this time of year, time to cheer for your team, close games. And here's the thing. This is why we played this video you guys just saw. I don't know about you, I love watching trick plays when they happen in games, when no one's expecting it. And I feel like college does this a little bit more than the NFL, but I love when a coach decides to try something unexpected and runs a trick play, because I love it when it works and when it doesn't. Like usually when it doesn't work, it goes horribly wrong, right? And I love the announcers. The announcers are like, if it goes well, the coach is like the smartest person on the planet, right? Like he dialed this up at just the right time, brilliant play call. But if the same coach runs the same play and it doesn't work, they're like, what was he thinking? The dummy, like it is high risk, high reward. And I love that about football. I love watching plays like that. It's incredible. And here with this series, Game Day, we're talking about different ideas as they kind of revolve around football. And today we're going to talk about that. We're going to be talking about trick plays. You see, by definition, trick plays, really what they are is a trick play is unexpected. They're creative. They're unanticipated, but most of all, they're risky. They're risky, right? Like you're running a risk in running this play. No one's expecting it to come. No one's really counting on it. They're usually really creative. As you saw, the quarterback there kind of went over to the side, looked like he was calling the play off. They snapped it to the guy who's not supposed to get the ball. And they do these crazy things. It's unexpected. It's creative. And yet, many times when it works, it looks awesome. It's incredible, right? And here's the thing, with trick plays, when the team is expecting them, they're less likely. A perfect example would be an onside kick. Now, what an onside kick is in football is the kicking team is supposed to be kicking it to the opposing team. But there's certain times that they kick the ball in such a way that they're trying to, in a sense, kind of kick it to themselves. One of the greatest onside kicks of all NFL history actually happened in the Super Bowl when the Saints came out of halftime. No one was expecting it. They were supposed to kick it to the Colts, and they got this onside kick at halftime, and they got it back. That play was even better because one of the staff here, Steve Cochran, is a huge Colts fan. So I love that play even more. And I brought that up like, hey, should I mention that? And he's like, no, I hate you. He's like, that was the worst day of my life. Why would you ever bring that up? And I was like, no, that was a perfect example of a trick play. And Steve, you don't think that was a good example? Okay, all right, cool. Anyway, like I love watching that happen. I love getting to see that. And I'll never forget, there was an opportunity when I was in high school and I played football. We ran one of the greatest trick plays of all time. I loved it. My junior year, we had an incredible team that we went deep into the playoffs. And I say we had an incredible team, but really we had an incredible player. Have you ever known teams like that like just give the ball to this guy? That was our strategy. The player for us, his name was J.R. Taylor, and he was phenomenal. He was incredible. We played 9 games. So mind you, we played 9 games in high school. And that year, he rushed for over 2,100 yards in 9 games. That's averaging over 240 yards, 230, 240 yards per game. And he scored 32 touchdowns that season, more than 3 touchdowns a game. Our strategy was, when in doubt, give it to JR. Like that, just keep giving it to JR. And here's how we mix it up. Sometimes JR would run this way, and other times JR would run that way. We really mixed it up. Like we were real creative. And then on rare occasions, we had him line up at wide receiver. And you know what we did? We threw the ball to JR. We just got it in his hands as many ways and as many times as possible and let him just run over people all day long. And there was one time that we happened to be playing a team that we weren't doing as well against, because what they decided is from watching game tape, they said, wait a minute, they just give it to JR every time. Pretty much that was our strategy. And what they did is every play, the entire defense, I kid you not, the entire defense would shout, 22, 22, watch 22, 22. That was his number. And they would call him out, whether he was at wide receiver or most of the time when he was at running back, and everyone would watch JR the entire play. And they were really stopping us. We were having a little bit of a hard time. We were still winning, but struggling a little bit. And we went in at halftime, and I'll never forget, my coach pulled us in. He's like, here's the deal. The first play at offense, we were getting the ball at the second half. He's like, here's what we're doing. JR had a younger brother named Winston. Winston was our starting middle linebacker, and he also occasionally played running back as well. And we noticed when Winston was at running back and JR was resting, nobody would shout JR's number or Winston's number. No one would key in on Winston like they would JR. So my coach had this idea. He said, here's what we're doing at halftime. JR and Winston switched jerseys, right? So JR comes out at halftime wearing his little brother's number, right? And he had like a dark visor. They put a dark visor on. So he goes out there, and the first play, they lined up JR, everyone thinking Winston, out at wide receiver. And no one was saying anything. No one was shouting anything. Quarterback snaps the ball, throws it to JR, and I'll never forget this little DB, this little defensive back, where they try to tackle JR, and he runs up, and JR just absolutely runs him over. Like, he was fast enough, he could have ran around him, but he's like, no, I'm going to punish you. So he like runs this kid over and runs for a touchdown, and I'll never forget the other team's face as JR runs back and takes the jersey off and trades back with his brother. I don't know if it's legal or not, but it was amazing. Like, I don't know how many rules we were breaking, but it was phenomenal, right? It was this great moment, this great trick play. And here's the thing with trick plays. You only get one chance to run them, right? Like if like right after that play, JR went back out and he's like, hi, I'm Winston, right? Like, no one's falling for it, right? Like, you get one shot at that play. In the same way, if the Eagles would have tried to run that play again against the Patriots, it never would have worked. You have one shot, right? And that, I love that. As somebody who, I love taking risks, I love the idea of the trick play. And here's what I'm gonna try to do today. I wanna tell you up front, I've got an agenda. There is something I'd like to accomplish today. And my goal is I wanna convince us, I wanna challenge you to not be afraid to run a trick play. Now, here's the thing. You might be thinking, Dan, what does football have to do with my life? What are you talking about here? And we'll get to that. We'll talk about that. But I want to remind you what a trick play is. A trick play, it's a play that uses unorthodox tactics to accomplish that which seems improbable. So it uses unorthodox approaches, tactics to accomplish something that seems improbable. You see, and I love this idea, and I love that all of you, that this church is a church that does things like this. I love that it was improbable for us to be where we're at today. It's improbable for us to have accomplished what we've accomplished so far because of all you guys. I'll never forget when we sat at my living room dining table and we talked about doing reverse offering. Something we do every week where we talk about if you're in need, if you don't know how you're gonna pay the groceries or put gas in your car, we want to be a church that those with extra put extra cash in. And then when there's people in this room that have need, that they can take that cash out and use it for those needs. Isn't that amazing? No, listen, you guys do that every single week. I love that. And I'll never forget though, because it was risky, because we didn't know of any other churches that did that. We didn't know, is there some God rule that you can't do this? I don't know, is there a rule book about church that you can or can't do this? And we sat there, and I'll never forget, we went around and around. We were like, what if they take the cash out and use it for drugs? We're trying to think of all these scenarios and all these situations, and we decided, let's take a risk. Because what we want to communicate to people more than anything is we want to be a church that we care about every person in this room. And we want to be the kind of church, don't we want to be the kind of church that when we have a little bit extra, we can give it so that it helps someone else in need? Wouldn't you feel so great if one Sunday you decided, I'm going to throw a few extra bucks in there, and you put some extra money in there, and you see it go down the road, and you see somebody, you have no clue who they are. Look down a little bit, maybe I need to put some gas in my car and take that out. Wouldn't you feel great about that? I think sometimes you might feel like, I don't know if I could do that. How amazing is that we get to be a church like that uses improbable or unorthodox rather approaches and tactics to accomplish something that seems improbable. I love that. I love that we've gotten to be a church like that leads the way in moments like that. It's improbable that we're in a building like this. as a church startup that launched just 5 years ago, that we're already here. It's amazing, it's unprobable, but it's been because of those unorthodox tactics that we've used from time to time that you've been a part of, that we've got to see this happen. I love that, and I want to challenge you to do that in your own life, to be that kind of person that takes those kinds of risks for things. And to do this, to communicate this, I want to show you at a moment when this happened as a part of Jesus' life. And to do this, though, for us to really understand this story, we need to understand a little bit of context, a little bit of history and culture about what's taking place. You see, the story I'm about to talk about is a story that takes place in the ancient Near East in the 1st century around Jesus' time. And it takes place, and the main character of the story is a woman. So you have to understand something from the get-go. In that culture, in that day and age, a woman wasn't viewed as very valuable. In fact, so much so that their testimony in the court of law wouldn't even be trusted. So if a woman had witnessed something and was brought to court, that wasn't enough. They were deemed as untrustworthy. Also, on top of that, imagine this, they were viewed more than anything as property. That's why if you've heard in that culture, if you've heard the idea of a bride price, basically what marriage was is it was a ceremony of a husband purchasing a wife from the father of the bride. I mean, that they were viewed as property. So from the get-go, the woman in this story has all the cards stacked against her. There's all the reason in the world not to take a risk, right? But then there's more than that, because this woman, the Bible tells us, has a certain reputation. Different translations, some translations say that she's a sinful woman, a woman of ill repute. Some translations have said that she's a harlot. For whatever reason, this woman has a really bad reputation in the community. And we've got to know this. Our reputations, what do? They precede us, don't they? Right? If you're meeting someone for the first time and before you meet them, a friend of yours says, hey, listen, they tend to gossip a lot, so I wanted to kind of give you a heads up. You'd be a little bit more guarded, wouldn't you? If they asked you how your day was going, it was going really bad, you'd say, good, right? Like it's good, like all's good, we're fine. If you're getting hired at a new job or moved into a new position and you heard that the boss in that division was really mean, was really hard, you'd be walking on eggshells around him, wouldn't you? You see, reputations and the reputations that precede us, they affect the people around us. So imagine a woman in that culture with that reputation. So talk about the cards being stacked against her. And then it gets even worse. I got to tell you kind of who the opposing team is in a sense, who she's going to kind of in a sense go up against. And it's a group of people known as the Pharisees. Now, if you've grown up in church, maybe you've heard that name thrown around a little bit. They were the people that helped conspire to actually kill Jesus. If you're not, the Pharisees are basically, think of a really religious, pious, like super acting spiritual type of person. They were in a sense the kind of spiritual gatekeepers in the temple. And they wouldn't let anyone by that they viewed as not deserving. And these were really strict. The letter of the law was real important. But the thing is, Jesus, his challenging words, when Jesus would call someone out and say something negative, it would usually be towards this group of people, these Pharisees. That's who his negative words most came towards, is the Pharisees, because the Pharisees were a group of people that on the outside had it together. When they came into church, they dressed in their Sunday best. You know, when the offering plate came by, they wanted everyone to know how much they were giving. They were really, outspoken in worship, and they wanted to be up front as much as possible and see people see how spiritual they were. They carried their Bible everywhere they went. This is the type of person that the Pharisees were. In fact, there were lots of sayings about the Pharisees. But the thing is, on the inside, Jesus kept challenging because their heart wasn't in it. That they cared a lot about appearances, they were judgmental. They lacked grace. They weren't merciful. The things that Jesus taught, hey, these are important things. They didn't have love in their heart. They had all the outward things, but on the inside, they were judgmental and critical. So now imagine this woman going up against these Pharisees. Imagine the challenge, how unorthodox this would be. A woman wouldn't speak out, wouldn't do anything in a room like this, let alone with the Pharisees there. But she decides one day that she's going to run a trick play. I want you to read this. We read this from Luke's account of Jesus' life. One of the Pharisees invited Jesus to have dinner with him. So he went to the Pharisee's house. He took his place at the table. There was a woman in that town who lived a sinful life. She learned that Jesus was eating at the Pharisee's house, so she came there with a special jar of perfume. So this woman, we can assume that she wants to meet with Jesus. She's probably heard of this Jesus person, that as he travels from town to town, he performs these different miracles. She hears of different people actually being healed. And then she hears these rumors of Jesus seemingly seems to forgive people of their sins. He absolves them of that guilt, giving them a fresh start and a clean slate. Maybe she's heard of some of the things that Jesus has done and said, and she thinks, that's what I need. More than anything, I need forgiveness. I feel bad over my past. I want to change, and I need that forgiveness, and I don't know where to go to receive it. And she hears that Jesus is showing up in her town. And imagine the excitement that she might be feeling. She thinks, like, I'm going to get a chance to talk to Jesus, and maybe I'll be forgiven of my sins. Maybe I'll hear those words. Your sins are forgiven. See, that's what she wants so desperately. And then I want you to imagine how you would feel if you were in her shoes and you hear that Jesus is actually going to the Pharisee's house. How that hope would just fall apart. That your only hope of getting a chance to talk to Jesus would mean you have to go into the house of the Pharisees. You know what they're going to think. You know what they're going to say. You know what their opinion of you is. Yet that's your only hope. See, I can only imagine how desperate she was. I can only imagine how much she wanted that. Because in light of all of that opposition, she decides to run a trick play. And we get a hint at the end of this verse that she's got this special jar of perfume. You see, in that culture, in that day and age, especially in many of the smaller communities, they wouldn't have coins to do business with, so that they would barter with different people and with different things. And that's how they could buy and sell things, is through the system of bartering. Well, a good mechanism to save things of value was many times oils and perfumes. Because as time went, you could add to the same jar, to the same box, oil as you made money, as you saved. And it was a way that that thing wouldn't depreciate, the oil, it wouldn't spoil. So that this was a sense of a way to save money over time. And for however long, this woman had saved up some perfume. She's got this many times in that culture, in that day and age. That would be a form of retirement, as they would save up oil or they would save up perfume, so that then when they were older, they could use that oil a little bit at a time and sell that off to be able to continue to survive in that culture. And this woman, that's her prized possession. That's what she has. So she decides to run a trick play. She's desperate. She needs to get face to face with Jesus. She knows what she's done. She knows that her reputation precedes her. She also knows the reputation of the Pharisees she's about to encounter. Let's see what happens. She stood behind Jesus and cried at his feet, and she began to wet his feet with her tears. Then she wiped them with her hair. She kissed them and poured perfume on them. I want you to imagine as she walks in that room, if that were you. Imagine what you would be feeling in that moment as the Pharisees, their eyes dart over and look at you. The scowls form on their face, and you try to ignore that and just keep your eyes on Jesus. She kneels down and begins to weep at his feet, washing his feet with her hair, pouring perfume onto her feet. She knows what the Pharisees think about her, and the Pharisees end up being exactly who we know them to be. Here's what happens with them. The Pharisee who had invited Jesus saw this. He said to himself, if this man were a prophet, he would know who's touching him. He would know what kind of woman she is. She is a sinner. See, this Pharisee not only has disdain for this woman, but now passes that on to Jesus, thinking clearly this man is no prophet. I've heard the rumors about him. I've heard that he's this great prophet doing great things, but surely he can't be a prophet, because if he were, he would know who this woman is. You see, the Pharisees saw the woman as nothing but a collection of her past mistakes and misdeeds. And in light of that, they saw her as worthless, of having no value. You see, but Jesus is different. You see, Jesus doesn't see her as a collection of her worst mistakes, but sees value and worth in her in spite of those mistakes. And can I just take a moment right now and let you know that regardless of what you've done, Jesus hasn't changed. So regardless of what you did last year, last month, last week, or even last night, Jesus does not see you as a collection of your greatest mistakes. He does not see you as worthless and having no value. In fact, the opposite is true. Jesus sees you as having incredible worth. He sees you for what you have to offer this world. It doesn't matter what you've done. It doesn't matter who you are. As a pastor, I've talked to so many people that say, listen, you don't know what I've done. You don't know my past. Listen, I need to tell you some things before I start coming to church here. I just want to make sure that I'm welcome here. I don't want to get plugged in here and start getting involved and then you find something out. So I just want to be up front. I want to tell you all my mess right now. And every time I sit there and I listen, I say, yeah, okay. Guess what? You're the exact kind of person Jesus would want in his church. You have value. You have something to offer this world, and you are welcome here. So Jesus does what no one expects. Jesus responds with grace and with mercy. Here's his response. Then Jesus turned towards the woman, and he said to Simon, the Pharisee whose house they were at, do you see this woman? I came into your house. You did not give me any water to wash my feet, but she wet my feet with her tears and wiped them with her hair. You did not give me a kiss, but this woman has not stopped kissing my feet since I came in. You did not put any olive oil on my head, but she has poured this perfume on my feet. So I tell you this, her many sins have been forgiven. She has shown that she understands this by her great acts of love. See, it was common in that culture, in that day and age, that when someone came into your home, a servant many times would give you a bowl, might even wash your feet after coming in from a long trip. You'd also be greeted many times in that culture with a kiss. We see this in another place in the Bible. It says to greet your brothers with the holy kiss. And then many times, again, in that context, you would offer olive oil. You'd put olive oil in the person's hair to help clean their hair. This was just a common thing. And Jesus says, you didn't do those things for me. And yet this woman, she's washing my feet with her hair. She hasn't stopped kissing my feet. And she has this expensive oil that she's sacrificed. He says, you don't get it, but this woman does. And in light of that, it shows how repentant she is. And her sins are forgiven. See, for this woman, it worked. Her great risk ended up paying off. She risked greatly and was rewarded greatly. That prayer, that hope to hear those words, your sins are forgiven, it paid off. She ran the trick play and it worked. And before we go on to talk about how we can live this out, what this means for me, can I just I feel like I want to add one more thing. Because here's the deal, when we read something like this, anytime you read a story about Jesus, I want to challenge you, do this. Ask yourself this question, where do I see myself in this story? Where do I find myself? And put yourself in a few of the different places. In what ways am I like that woman? Have I made mistakes that I regret? In light of that, what do I need to do? I can take great risks for Jesus. When we look at the Pharisees and ask ourselves, in what ways am I like that? In what ways am I judgmental? Do I end up coming off condemning of other people? In a time, in a season, in our culture, in our world of great divide, a lot of problems in our culture, I think we can all learn a lot if we try to be more like Jesus. It offers grace and love and mercy. In a time in our country where the different sides of the political spectrum want to look at the other person and vilify them and say they're evil, can we be a place that listens and loves? See, we're all pulled towards that. We all have this gravitational force that pulls us towards like being a Pharisee. Seeing ourselves as we're good, we've got it together, we've got the right opinion, and everybody else is wrong. May we be more like Jesus. In a difficult time, we offer grace and hope and love. That we listen to people. See, because there's something about Jesus. You see, people that weren't like Jesus liked Jesus. And actually, Jesus liked them back. So let me ask you, in your culture, in your world, and in your sphere of influence, people that aren't like you, do they like you? People that are nothing like you, that you have nothing in common, do they like being around you? Because people that were very unlike Jesus really liked Jesus. And Jesus loved them, even when they weren't like him. So I want us to all look inside a little bit and just take a moment, slow down. I'm going to challenge you, be careful that we never become like the Pharisees. That we act like that we've got it all figured out and everybody else is wrong. In fact, may we be more like Jesus, that we offer grace and hope and love to people that aren't like us. May we never be a church that when people come in and they believe differently than us, they look differently than us, they act differently than us. May we not be like the Pharisees that expect them to clean up their act, to start acting right before they're welcome here. But may we be like Jesus and offer them grace and say, you know what? You're welcome here. Come on in. And you know what might happen when we do that? We might get accused of some those. You know what? That's okay. Because Jesus did too. In fact, I want us to ask, do we ever get accused for offering too much grace to those that others deem misbehaving? Because if you do, you're in good company. Because so did Jesus. I'm sure those Pharisees wanted to know, well, are you going to tell her what to do and what not to do? Or are you going to tell her when she goes out of here, you got to do this? I mean, Jesus, hold on. We got to make sure she cleans up first. And Jesus responds, your sins are forgiven. See, my real challenge for us today is to be like that woman. To sometimes come to a point where we run a trick play to get what we so desperately need. A reminder, trick plays are unexpected, they're creative, and they're unanticipated. And most of all, they're risky. You might be out there today and you have this dream that you've never told anyone. Maybe you want to go back to school, but you feel like that season is too far gone. Take that risk. Go for it. Maybe you've always wanted to start that business and you're so afraid. Go for it. Especially, listen, if it hinges back on Jesus, do it. You can always bet on Jesus. If it's an opportunity so that you can serve more people, love more people, give more freely, do it. And there may be people in this room that it's not a business thing, it's not a school thing, it's not a life thing. I mean, there might be people that you've wanted to invite to church, you've wanted to have some conversations about Jesus, but you're so nervous. What are they going to think about me? What are they going to say? Take the risk. Find out. Talk to them about Jesus. Talk to them about your experience. Invite them to church. Take that risk. Run that trick play. There also might be people in this room that maybe today's your first day at Icon. Or maybe you've been coming for a while and you're unsure about this whole Jesus thing. You've been to church before. You know the deal, but there's something about Jesus